and welcome to our webinar, How Effective IT Leaders Approach Asset Management with ServiceNow. So let's get started. After this webinar, we hope that you're able to gain a much better handle on action steps to make your asset management problems go away. And here to present from ITS is Yvette Matthews. Yvette is our Vice President of Professional Services. Yvette, take it away.
Thanks, Rachel. Really happy to get a chance to spend some time talking about asset management and some of the exciting things that I know you guys experience. And you may not think they're exciting, but I certainly do. So as you can see, I'm well aware that the fact that asset management is a struggle. We have a ton of things to manage, especially with our working from home environment a lot of us had to go to. We also may not have all the processes that we need. There's a lot of things that cause chaos in our day. And as an asset manager or someone who's managing assets, it can be a real struggle and it can get a little stressful. So when we're talking about that chaotic look, what negative impact is that going to have on your organization? So when we look at it, we have an increased cost to IT, meaning we're buying things we probably don't need to, but since we don't know what we have, it's a challenge for us to decide not to buy something. We want to make sure our employees or our staff have what they need. And in that case, we may buy things that we don't need to have. Our employees don't have a very good experience. Say you're onboarding a new person. Part of that struggle is going to be that new person getting their equipment. Are they going to be able to get that equipment efficiently? Or are they going to have to fill out 6 forms, go through a 2-week waiting period, and maybe not get the exact equipment they need based on their role or the software that they're looking for? We don't want to talk about the chaos that comes with being audited and not being prepared. We all know how painful that is. I'm guessing a lot of you are taking a significant amount of time as well to manage your assets. I would rather hear you tell me stories about how you're able to more efficiently manage your assets than talking about the chaos that you're having because it's taking so much time, you're not getting anything else done. IT security, I'm going to assume, let them say something in the chat, are going to be really unhappy about having a chaotic asset environment because they can't manage what they don't know exists. And again, no one wants to do ITAM unless there's something in it for them. So it's really hard to get buy-in from those other parts of the business. Do any of those sound familiar? Do you guys have this stuff happen to you every day? I'm going to guess you're going to say yes. We have over 25 years experience of listening to customers talk about stories around chaos in their asset management programs, problems with maintaining security posture because assets are unknown, where they are, who's using them, where there could potentially be a vulnerability, and also all the costs associated with an uncontrolled environment. So if we were to defeat the chaos of asset management, if we were to take control of our assets, what would that look like? Well, I think first thing is we'd have a reduced cost in IT. We wouldn't be buying things that we didn't need. We would be better prepared for every audit that came through, meaning we don't have to spend so much time, 6 months, preparing for an audit finding review, when in fact we could just be ready at any time for them. Cybersecurity is going to be more confident because they're going to know what we have. They can take a look in the asset repository and say, you know what, we have that. This is great. I know who's using it and where it should be used and what it's used for. Our employee experience for getting hardware and software they need will be optimized. There'll be less waiting and there'll be more confidence that they're going to get what they need in a time frame they need to get it in. And last but not least, you won't be spending so much time on the mundane and able to maybe move forward with some of those initiatives that you've been trying to do as an asset manager, building out your programs and ensuring that you have the right resources to the right customer at the right time. Why do most places fail with IT asset management? Because they haven't identified some of the damaging misconceptions that people have. If you've been to any of my other discussions, we've talked a lot about places that people seem to have gotten these ideas about asset management that may or may not be correct. So things like it's something you can do part-time, you don't need to staff a staff for it. Basic things as you grow and evolve. So I'm going to go through some of them that maybe will help you talk to your organization if you're struggling with some of those things. For example, things that aren't true. ITAM is too complex and expensive. I'd rather just pay fines. And you wouldn't believe how many of my clients tell me when we start that their organization had chosen to pay fines instead of actually establishing an appropriate ITAM organization. I don't know how you could live with yourself having a $1 million audit fine when you could have just hired an asset team to manage your assets. There's not enough return on investment. The truth is, if I can't manage what I have, I'm impacting the bottom line no matter what. So I don't know how, if you don't understand what you're doing, how you're even measuring the ROI to begin with. My favorite is that ITAM is easy. I hear that on occasion from people who don't do asset management, that it's just counting widgets. It's not counting widgets. It's a business issue around the quality of the data, managing the physical and financial and contractual information around our assets. And there's nothing easy about any of those measurements. One of my interesting ones is ITAM is just software licensing. And I often ask people, does their software run on air? And their answer is, well, no, it runs on a computer, silly. And I say, okay, well, then if I don't know what computers are in my organization, I'm not entirely certain how I should know if I'm measuring all of my software licensing. It's a part-time job for another department. Well, no, that's not true at all. It should be its own department, and you're not going to be successful only doing asset management part-time because it's a full-time role. It's a specialty that people get certified in and become experts in order for your organization to leverage that. You need to build out an ITAM program, not just an ITAM project. It doesn't go away at the end of the project. It's going to live with your organization forever. And ITAM is just about inventory. That's one that you hear from people who are just starting out in ITAM, and they haven't realized it's not just counting the number of things and where they are. It's prioritizing your assets by assessing their risk and their importance to the organization and managing that contractual and financial data associated with them. So if you stop thinking, helping your organization stop thinking about all of the things that are not true, you can take back control of your asset management or program. I'm going to talk about our next steps on how to create that plan moving forward. So, without a good asset management plan to build the program, you're going to have a lot of challenges because a lot of people, when you get started, are going to have ideas on what you should be doing. The first is scope creep. If you haven't defined what assets you would like to focus on. So we always tell our clients, and I tell my friends who do asset management, don't try to quote boil the ocean. And I know that sounds kind of trite, but it's not. If you don't pick the things you want to focus on first, what's going to happen is you're going to try to do everything, and you're not going to make any progress because you have too wide of a net that you've cast. You're going to want to focus on the things you have the greatest control over first and work on those. Once you build out a defined process that works for those, then you can start looking at some other things that maybe you're going to have to coordinate with other departments on managing. Next, you'll have to worry about funding. If you don't have current accurate data to support the fact that you would like to build out an ITAM plan, it's hard for people to give you money for a project. So one of the things that I find to be really helpful is to coordinate with someone in your CISO's office or your CISO directly and talk to them about their challenges. A lot of our clients get a lot of success in working with the security organization because the security organization sees the need for an ITAM program, sometimes more quickly than some of the other parts of the business, and they can help provide funding or help you build a business case to get you funding from whatever your funding part of your organization is. And lastly, we have overspend. So part of your business case should be in your plan to talk about what your overspend is. And that can be as basic of how many devices have you purchased for new hires compared to how many devices you purchased for existing employees. Think about that, or think about what it's going to cost if you have an audit on a piece of software. We don't want to spend that money if we don't have to. Part of a good ITAM plan would be to build guardrails around what you're doing. So that will help you from having scope creep. So building out an actual project plan, getting educated through, say, IAITAM or the ITAM forum, working with consultants who do this every day. Those are great ways to help you build out an appropriate plan and understand where you should start. Next is to create your goals. Um, we need to make sure that we're determining what we want to consider an asset. So in some organization, monitors might be considered assets, and others they're considered consumable assets, meaning I don't want to build an asset tracking strategy around those. Remember, not everything can be managed. There are going to be things that you can't manage, and you just need to make sure that you're taking all of those things into consideration. Then it's building the processes. If you don't build your processes into your ITAM plan, you're not going to be successful. If you do not have a process, everything you're doing is just a suggestion. And we all know that people don't always follow suggestions. Processes should be documented. They should be put in a place that's centralized that everyone can get to them. And they should be regularly viewed and reviewed and ensure that they're still accurate for the way your organization is currently using ITAM. So every 6 months or so, it's probably a really good idea for you to review your processes once they've been built. Essentially, when you start. After that, you can build out a longer cadence once your program is up and running. When you're trying to build your collaborative plan, you're going to need to get buy-in from other parts of your organization. Now, not every single person is going to understand why they're being asked to be here. They're not going to understand what asset management is. So part of this plan that you've put together should explain that to them. You're going to want to make sure that you have your plans, the guardrails you put around them, and your processes identified, not built, but identified so that you can start working with these other stakeholders in the organization to explain why they need to participate or at least not hinder your progress. Next, you're going to want to enable your stakeholders. You're going to want to make sure that we know what's in it for them. Remember, most people are more than happy to participate in a new effort if you've communicated with them what's in it for them. So whether it's the folks at the help desk and having better data or understanding who the user is on the phone and what assets they might be using at any given time, to the procurement team so that maybe they can have some better reporting on what's actually in the environment so they don't go out and buy things. Maybe a procurement request goes through a different process where we look to source internally from our stock rooms instead of buying something new. But enabling your stakeholders and making sure they understand all of the intricacies of your asset management organization is going to be critical for you in order to have a good asset management program. Who are your stakeholders? You probably asked that when I started mentioning help desk and the procurement team. Well, we have a lot of people. You've got your legal team. That's going to be one of those places you have to look in case you have separations that happen. And what if there's a legal hold? And do you have the right information? And can you find the hardware? The field services team going out and working on things. They may have SLAs, and your data may help them make their SLAs on time. You've got the CMDB team. Remember, in ServiceNow, your CMDB and your asset repository are different tables, but they're intricately connected. You're going to want to make sure that your CMDB team is aware of what you're doing on the asset side so you don't cause them any confusion with their CIs. The procurement team, as I mentioned before, helping them ensure that they get what they need and that they're not buying things they don't need to. And then human resources. Why, you say, am I thinking of human resources? Because who does your onboarding and your offboarding of employees? It's your human resources department. Building out things so they can effectively request assets for new people or a way to decommission or retrieve assets from separated employees are really critical. So yes, they're absolutely stakeholders in what you're trying to do. Next, you're going to want to step 4, develop your team. So as I said, it's not something you can do part-time on a Thursday. You actually need real people to do this work. Now, at minimum, you'll need an asset manager. I would recommend consulting with a knowledgeable organization to talk about what the size of team is needed. And that's going to depend on a lot of things like how many assets, what countries are they in, Are you managing hardware and software? How many software publishers, software titles, et cetera? There's a lot of complexity to building out the right sized asset management team, and a good consulting company should be able to help you do so. Secondly, is building out your audit response team. Now, that's not a standalone team. It's a team comprised of people who work in answering your audit requests from your software vendors. So you're going to have people from legal and procurement and the asset management side. They should have asset data in order to help them do what they're trying to do and to get that information. But having those people ready and prepared cuts down on having to scramble to find people to help answer an audit that comes in. Step 5 is prioritizing your assets. You can't manage everything. As I said before, we don't want to boil the ocean. Our net can be cast too wide. So we're going to want to make sure that we only focus on those things we really find valuable, that we really want to manage. It may be servers because they're very expensive, but they also don't move a whole lot. They're in a data center. Or do we say we're really interested in managing our end user compute environment because maybe we have a lot of laptops and they may get legs and walk away? Um, you just need to prioritize what you're most interested in. And for every organization, it's going to be different. Part of the approach we use in determining which assets are going to be critically important is talking to your stakeholders. So that group that we talked about 3 slides ago, those stakeholders, they're going to be the ones who are using this data. I mean, think about it. The asset manager doesn't really need to use the data. They're stewards of the data for other people. So what do the stakeholders feel is critical? Um, where do we have financial or regulatory requirements around those assets? So is there a requirement around disposal? Because you're in a particular country where we can't dispose of something the way we normally would through our disposal vendor. Are there requirements for financial reasons? So it's a fixed asset. And do we have to know when it's being fully depreciated? Or if we get rid of it early, we have to provide information back to who's ever running the fixed asset register. We need to look at which is most likely to be audited. So when we're talking about software, certain titles we know we're probably going to get audited on if we have those titles. Look at those and say, do we want to prioritize them so we can make sure we have that information at hand? I would also say seek out a partner to help you. Now, there are a lot of different partners out there. Make sure they have a specialty in asset management. Make sure they understand and have practitioners on staff who've done this for their job. That's going to make it easier for you to get the information you need, because just consulting on asset management isn't the same as having someone who's done asset management for a living. In the case that we're talking about, because we also are talking about people doing this in ServiceNow, you're going to want to make sure they understand how the ServiceNow system is configured. They understand how Ham and Sam work in ServiceNow and how the integrations work with your discovery sources, but that's kind of a given at this point. We know we have to get the data from somewhere. So then on to step 6. Imagine that we have a sustainable and confident future and we're more effective. So we've decreased our costs for IT. Our audit findings have gone down to being less difficult to manage. So for example, you're not going to have auditors pinging you every 6 months or every year. They've understand and have confidence that they're not going to make a lot of money for you. So why are they going to want to bother you? Cybersecurity is going to be satisfied that they now know what's in the environment so they can manage it on their end. The employee experience is going to be transformed, and we're going to feel as if we are the gateway, not a roadblock to getting them something. So our catalog items are great. Our ability to procure software is fast and easy and maybe automated. That would be our preference. And you're not spending all of your time managing your assets. You're actually able to do some of the initiatives around improvement and bringing some more efficiencies to your group and your department. Wouldn't it be amazing if that's what we could do with a good ITAM program? Step 7, and this is going to be my little plug, is to schedule a demo with us. ITS has 25 years of experience, and we love talking about asset management. In fact, I have a huge team. That's all we do. So feel free to schedule a demo with us today. We'd love to talk to you about what's going on in your environment and help you move forward and get out of that asset chaos stage into something that's more sustainable and more enjoyable for you.